Hey everybody, welcome along. It's Marshall with Paul here, and we are covering the first booster draft. This is Theros Beyond Death for the Magic the Gathering World Championship 26. We are going to be following along with Piotr Głogowski. This has the most weight on it of any booster draft ever done in the history of our game. So no pressure, Piotr.
Yeah.
And he sits down and he opens a tectonic giant here, a perfectly good rare.
Yeah, and that's exactly the way you want to start out the biggest draft of your life, right? Tectonic Giant, fantastic creature, 4 mana, 3/4, gives you so much value, and it's, there is no uncommon in the set that I would want over this, so this seems like a pretty easy Tectonic Giant here.
Yeah, he did take a quick thumb through the rest of the pack, of course, to figure out things like what he might get back on the wheel or any other potential considerations. But Tectonic Giant, while not being a game-ending bomb, is strong enough that you would take it over basically anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically nearly immune to removal, right? Because if opponents do have a way to deal with the Tectonic Giant, you're still getting your value because you can reveal the top 2 cards of your library and then choose one of those, and you can cast it on your next turn. So you have an entire turn window to actually play the best card in the top 2 cards of your library.
Additionally, if it gets targeted, it does 3 damage to each opponent if you choose that. So if you are in an aggressive situation, you can take advantage of that.
And as you can see, the Tectonic Giant here, the thing is, if you play it early, you can get the card advantage, and if you play it late and your opponent's low on life, you can just use it to finish your opponent off. Of course, also has that attack trigger.
So the next pick here, a nice one, Mire's Grasp, probably the best common in the whole format, and it just got past to him.
Yeah, absolutely. At that point, when you see a card like Mire's Grasp, you have to think probably took an uncommon or a rare, because those are the only cards you would take.
And now, third pick, another great removal spell, probably the second best removal spell in the set. He's got Final Death. Now, this is 2 premium black commons coming his way, but as you know, black is the most popular color in this format.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of people kind of fighting over black because I think it's consensus considered to be the best color. And if you looked at that pack, there was also Slaughter Priest of Mogus. Maybe he gets lucky in that tables, but fantastic start. Red rare into 2 of the premium removal spells in the format.
I wonder if he's worried at this point, though, because people do fight it over black so commonly.
Yeah, but the thing is, black is also very deep, right?
Yeah.
Not only does it have really, really great removal, it can support multiple drafters. Like, you can even just have 3 black drafters at a table and everything can still be fine.
Now he picks up an Omen of the Forge for this next pick, another reasonable removal spell. Also in this pack, there's a Heroes of the Revel, though it does look like he leans over towards the Omen of the Forge here.
Yeah, now, while Heroes of the Revel is a good card, it's a 5 mana 4/4, gives you a 1/1, you get the trigger, you get to pump your team. It's still somewhat replaceable. There's a couple of commons, especially in red and black, at 5 mana that you could easily replace this with, whereas a card like Omen of the Forge, you want to kind of shore up your early defense, and this is the perfect card for that.
So continuing the theme here for Piotr, he's not only taking red and black cards, he's also taking removal cards, basically as many of them as he can possibly get. And this next one is Final Flare for him.
Look, you only need the Tectonic Giant to go all the way. Everything else could be a removal spell. That's a really good pickup here. Of course, he's going to want creatures to fill out the rest of his deck, but fantastic start so far for Piotr.
Next, he picks up a Scavenging Harpy, a fine playable, but nothing really to write home about. This is starting to get into the middle of the pack where you start to pick up cards like this.
Yeah, kind of the replacement level cards. They'll make it into your deck. You're not overly excited about it. And, they're not really going to kind of help determine whether or not you win or lose matches, basically.
Speaking of replacement level, he picks up an Oread of Mountains Blaze, another card that, again, might make the cut in the deck, but isn't particularly special. Okay, this next pick is kind of interesting because he actually has the choice here between, he can take a decent black card for his deck. He's got Minions Return there. It might go in. He's got a lot of removal. You can kind of do some cool tricks with a card like that. But as you can see, he's got Witness of Tomorrow's pulled to the front, a blue card.
Yeah, and that's when you look at a pack like this, you might think, well, this might be a signal, right? This is a fairly late Witness of Tomorrow's. Now, Witness of Tomorrow's isn't like a bomb. You're not slamming it. It's not like a premium common, but it is a pretty solid card. I've never cut it from my blue decks. So when you see a card come this late, this might be a sign that blue's open. So I could see Piotr taking this as a speculative pick and kind of keeping himself flexible. Unlikely to make his deck, but hey, if you see more blue cards, you see some blue rares coming down the pipeline later, all of a sudden you might pivot and go into blue-red or blue-black.
So that's what he's going to take here to kind of round things out. for his first pack of close-up picks here. Now, we do have the rest of his pack, and as you can see right about there where the Blue Witness of Tomorrow's is, he did get a Minions Return. A Scophos War Leader came back, to back up your point earlier about the 5 drops, and then the quality kind of fell off for pack 1. But going into pack number 2, things look pretty good for him. So that's what was going on at this one seat. But of course, we can now zoom out and take a look at how the rest of the table is shaping up around Piotr. You and I mentioned before, when he got the Myers Grasp in the final death, that being in black is precarious because so many players want to be in that color. And look at what's happened here. Not only are there 5 players at the table that currently have black cards in their pile, the 2 drafters to his immediate left, that's Sebastian Pazzo as well as Gabrielle Nazif, are also in black, and they're the ones who are going to be passing cards to him.
Yeah, so Piotr's going to have a difficult time picking up those black cards in pack 2. It's going to be tough because, if you look at kind of how the draft went down, Piotr didn't pass a whole lot of black cards. So this tells me that Nazif probably had to take, maybe a black rare just to make himself in black in pack 1. And, he's really going to have to hope to pick up some red cards to kind of flesh out his deck for pack 2.
It's rough out there. Pack 2, pick 1 now.
Wait, is this pack 1 or what's going on here?
No, your video is correct. And that is another tectonic giant here for Głogowski. Now, that's a pretty straightforward pick for him, right? It's the same rare. He pack 1, pick 1. It's in his colors, and it's really strong. So he takes that card. Makes sense. We'll keep that simple. But if we look across the table here at Toralf Zeverin, a lightning bolt just struck this draft, and it hit his pack. Toralf, coming out of the first pack, was red-black, and he opened Dream Trawler. So
you just pass it, right? Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. But we can hear from Toralf on what he actually did.
I opened the Dream Trawler, and then I looked at it like you can't take it. My whole pack is black-red. I cannot take it. But to my disadvantage, there was just nothing else. It was completely empty. So I had to take it anyway. I had no other choice.
And this could potentially derail Autumn's entire draft.
Yeah, it's going to have an impact on everybody in that area, Autumn most profoundly.
Yes.
Okay, but back to Piotr. And let's see how the rest of pack number 2 goes for him. Again, Tectonic Giant was his first pick out of this pack and the last one. Very solid for him. And now he's going to pick up an Underworld Ragehound, which, Paul, might give us some clue as to how he wants to play this deck.
Yeah, it looks like he wants to be a little more aggressive here, curve out, and just committing himself into red-black here.
Now, he's got an interesting pick in pack 2, pick 3. He actually opened a Temple of Malice, which is perfect dual land for his deck, but he could, if he wanted, take an Incendiary Oracle as a good 2-drop.
Yeah, and I've been very happy with Incendiary Oracle just as a 2-drop. It actually surprisingly does a lot of work for kind of what you call your typical bear, your 2-mana 2/2. It scales reasonably into the late game. But at the same time, those temples give you so much value. Hey, look, do you like casting your spells? Well, temples help you do that.
Next pick, there's a Final Flare in the pack. There's also, though, an Underworld Charger and a Flummoxed Cyclops, as well as Mogus's Favor. A lot of options, and they're all very different here for Piotr.
Yeah, and, the Final Flare, while it's a solid card, I like having one in my deck. He doesn't even have a lot of creatures in his deck right now, so probably not looking to pick up the second Final Flare. I'd probably be looking at one of the 2 creatures there.
Yeah, agreed, and he actually ends up going with the Underworld Charger, which indicates that A, he wants to be aggressive, and B, maybe he's going to value cards that that mill him later in the game so that he can try to get some value from those 2 back-to-back picks, by the way, on escape creatures.
Yeah, and it's really important just in any draft deck in this format to just make sure you have a couple of escape cards, right? Because, sometimes there's something to be said for having some mill effects, but at the same time, you don't always need to have mill effects. If you play a normal game of Magic, you're going to be able to escape once or twice in the course of a match.
He picks up a Scavenging Harpy for his next pick over not really anything else. And then another 4-drop with the Nyxborn Marauder. Again, he's just sort of filling out the curve. These are not important, impactful picks, but they mean something, right? You need these cards in your deck at some point.
Yeah, there is no shortage of playables in this format, and he's just picking up cards that are going to slot themselves into his deck, but again, not really going to move the needle. But now a nice little gift here in an Omen of the Forge here. And notably, that's a fairly late Bronzehide Lion here. So, if there is a Selesnya drafter in the draft, they're going to be rewarded here.
I can't imagine what it's like to sit in that seat with the stakes that are on the draft matches at this event.
Right. There's only one draft, but again, like you mentioned before, biggest draft of their lives. And doing well in the draft is so crucial to having success in this format, especially with the tournament style that we have in place.
That's right. You can take a look at the rest of the pack here. for Piotr. He did pick up a Lampad of Death's Vigil, which is a card that's likely to make the cut, as well as another Scophos War Leader, and he even got back a Flemic Cyclops. So his curve is nicely filled out here, even if it isn't with the premium creatures that you hope for.
Yeah, I mean, this is a significantly weaker start than what we saw in the first pack. We had the premium removal. Picked up a bunch of cards that's going to fill out his deck. He's going to be probably looking for a little more power in pack 3, or at least hoping for it.
Okay, so that's pack number 2, but once again, let's zoom out and see how things have developed from the table perspective. Now people will have really solidified themselves into the colors that they're going to be drafting. And as you can see, Głogowski's in a pretty good position here. He has one player playing black upstream of him for this third pack and one player playing, well, a lot of red as it turns out, but it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Seth Man Field is in green-white, so any black or red card that gets past to Seth is going to go directly into Piotr's deck. And one thing that I want to mention is the fact that Taralf Severin made a hard pivot into blue-white.
He's now blue-white.
As you can see, he went from red-black to blue-white. Guess what? That means that's one less red-black drafter that Piotr has to compete with in pack 3.
Yeah, he could get some really good stuff late. Let's see how pack number 3 goes. All right, so here's pack number 3, and he continues the trend of opening on-color rares. In this case, it's the mythic rare Ox of Agonis that he's opened. So 3 red rares, no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way you want to start your World Championship run, right? You just take all the red rares and make sure you get it all past you. So yeah, great start once again here for Piotr.
Pick 2 is Blood Aspirant. Fine. Yeah. Right, this is a card that will go into his deck. It isn't perfectly suited for his archetype, as it turns out. You'd like to be able to abuse some of the sacrifice synergies with that. That said, it's totally playable.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just a pretty solid card to have in any deck.
All right, for the next pick, he's looking at Final Flare here, but as you mentioned, these do go down in multiples, but it looks like he values it highly enough, and he's going to take it here.
Yeah. Probably not a whole lot of other things that, would contend with that Final Flare, so just taking that second copy.
He ends up finding a Mire Triton here, but this is where things get also interesting. There is a Thrix the Sudden Storm in this pack still. Feels like it's too late for Piotr to really consider it, but wow, that's a powerful card to still be in the pack.
Right, and the thing is, if the card was somewhat weaker, let's say it was just that Lampad, he might have considered taking that Thrix just to see what happens. But Mire Triton is a fantastic card, and a card you will never, ever cut in any black deck.
His next pick is a Venomous Hierophant, which also helps him get cards into his graveyard. So, the Chargers and the Rage Hound that he got from before are starting to look a lot better.
Yeah, the escape cards are definitely getting higher in value. And again, those cards are just cards you're happy to put into the deck.
The next pick is a Aspect of Lamprey. He did have the option on taking an Aspect of Manticore, but the Aspect of Lamprey fits his game plan much better, so he went with that.
Yeah, oftentimes you're going to see that as a sideboard option against the slower decks.
And this next pick is another solid uncommon 2-drop. He just got a Mire Triton a few picks ago, and now Careless Celebrant. Really annoying card to play against, whether they're attacking you and offering to trade up or whether they leave it back on blocks. It's just kind of a handful.
Yeah, Piotr has several ways to sacrifice creatures in his deck as well. Imagine a Celebrant with a Final Flare. You can really just mess up combat math. And additionally, he has multiple copies of Omen of the Forge in his deck, so probably doesn't need a redundant third copy of that card.
Okay, so let's take a look at the pack as it ended up working out. We see the Careless Celebrant. He did get Amogus' Favor after that, as well as a Funeral Rites. So, all told, this thing kind of came together for him.
Yeah, absolutely. He picked up a bunch of filler cards, but at the same time, he has those rares that can potentially put his deck over the top. The 2 Giants along with the Ox, and, very, very solid removal. So I think, he just played a seat. Fairly straightforward draft, I would say, for Piotr. He saw a bunch of good red and black cards, took them, and then ended up with a very solid deck.
So that's Piotr Głogowski's draft. Now we get a chance to actually look at his deck as it was built and hear from him about how happy he is with it, or maybe not.
I think my deck is okay. I'm not unhappy with it. I was pretty fortunate to open 3 on-color rares, and I think it turned out to be pretty solid.
Next up, we have Gabrielle Nazif's blue-white deck. He was black-white moving into pack 2, and then after pack 3, he ended up in blue-white. So let's see what he feels about his deck.
And I don't know, my curve's kind of weird. I'm lagging a few creatures. I feel not great about it. I could see having mana issues. I don't know, I'm worried. I think I might not get the 2 wins I need to get.
And next we've got Sebastian Pozzo, who's got a black, red, and green deck.
My draft wasn't particularly good, I don't have bombs, but it's solid overall. It's a black-green escape deck, tries to go to the late game, so I have a bunch of defensive stuff. Tomorrow I'm hoping to go 2-1.
After Pato, we have Autumn Burchett, who still stayed true and ended up with a blue-white deck.
It was actually kind of funny. I talked to the person who's on my left after the draft, and he said he opened a Dream Trawler and had to take the Dream Trawler and pass the Staggering Insight, knowing that I'd taken blue cards all of pack 1 based on the signals I was sending him. So it put us in a weird situation relative to each other, but I think pack 2 still came out fine for me.
And next we get to hear from XXVI, who somehow started off black-red and ended up white-blue-black. Let's hear from him.
I would say for the seat I was in, I was fairly good. Like, I ended up with a pretty decent deck. If I probably would have stayed with black-red, it would have been a bit worse.
Next up, we have Andre Strasky, who decided to play only one color and ended up with a pretty spicy mono-red deck.
I saw the Anax as my second pick, and then I was like, okay, I like red, so I'm just gonna keep picking red cards, and then I never found second color to complement it, so I was like, okay, just mono red, it's fine. I feel pretty good. I think the deck is strong. I would rate like 8 out of 10, so hopefully I don't get mono screwed or anything, and I have good draws, and I'll advance.
Okay, now we're going to hear from Marcio Carvalho, who may be the best drafter in the field, and we'll see what he did with black-green.
So my draft was smooth. I think the deck is pretty good. I'm hoping to 2-0 or 2-1, so let's hope the games go well, but I'm pretty happy with it.
And finally, we have the 2015 World Champion, Seth Man Field, and his thoughts on his green-white deck.
I feel like my deck isn't the best at the table. I'm hoping it's not the worst, but I haven't seen the other decks at the table. So I would give it like a pretty average or slightly below average grade.
Okay, so we've heard from the players. Some really solid decks came out of this pool, but nothing amazing. I think a lot of that might be due to XXVI and his change of minds in Pack 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Taraf basically just changing colors, like 2 colors, not even 1, changing 2 colors, might have just derailed the entire draft to the point where, it was hard to get somebody with an A grade in this draft because, he basically just kind of messed up the entire flow of the draft by changing colors.
That's right. Now, it is also worth keeping in mind that the players are going to be playing against each other within this pot. And what that means is if you have the best deck in your pot, even if it's a C, you can still win with it because you're better than the other decks in the pot.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the grades here, we're kind of grading on a curve, right? So if the highest grade is a B+, guess what? For that draft, that's an A.
All right, it is time, Paul. Will Piotr's 3 red rares be enough to carry him? Will XXVI's big switch see him live the dream? It's time to find out.